Oh
So the
God.
Biden administration
Oh
has
God. Not those
widened
gangsters again, please.
they've widened the war in the Middle East.
Oh
What
God.
began, of course, as a US-backed war of Israeli aggression in Gaza has ignited into what many feared would be a regional war. Now the Biden administration has announced there will be a weeks-long bombing campaign across quote-unquote Iranian targets in Syria and Iraq. And of course, you've been writing about the situation with regard to the Red Sea and Yemen, and Yemen's resistance through the blockade. The U.S. and these neocons seem entangled now in a broader war. Can you tell us the significance of this, especially in relation to the geoeconomic and geopolitical changes that have been occurring in the multipolar world? Because this feels like the neocons being dragged back into a historical kind of drudgery that was not predicted before, I guess, before October 8th.
Well, they are dragging themselves to what they do best, which is to launch unprovoked, absurd wars that they cannot win. And at the same time, there was a very, very subtle trap laid out by the axis of resistance. And the crash test dummy administration and the neocons fell right into this trap. It's beautiful. It's like it was a geopolitical reenactment of an Edgar Allan Poe short story, in fact. The most important thing is that whatever happens, even if they launch pinpointed attacks against the axis of resistance across the spectrum, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, especially, the axis of resistance has already made it very, very clear that they won't back down. On the contrary, they will increase their attacks, not only via Ansarullah, but also the militias in Iraq. It was very funny because one of the militias that's part of Hashd al-Shabi, Kataib Hezbollah, they said, now we're going to retreat a little bit because we're paying our respects to the government in Baghdad who wants to actually expel the Americans from our land. But this is a very, very clever PR operation as well, because they won't relent. In fact, they are going to redeploy along with other militias and along the core of the Hashd al-Shabi, the People's Mobilization Units, which, by the way, are linked to the Ministry of Defense in Iraq. So they are a semi-official or official body as well. So this so-called, for the moment, counterattack by the Biden administration against Iranian or Iranian-linked targets across the axis of resistance, they will be attacking the Iraqi government as well. Whatever they do in Iraq, they will be attacking Baghdad. And Baghdad not only tries to maintain a good relationship with the hegemon, but at the same time try to expel them from Iraq. So it's going to get incredibly more complicated than it already is. What happened with Yemen is absolutely outstanding. And this is something that anybody with an IQ over room temperature across the global south now understands the role of some sort of vanguard by Ansarullah, the Houthis Ansarullah, now in the big picture. One of the columns that I wrote recently, it was great because we used it in the title as well, the concept of asabiya. Asabiya is a very, very important Arab word. Arabic has beautiful words that have many, many meanings. That's the case with asabiya. But the most important meaning of asabiya in terms of geopolitics, and that's why we used Yemen, asabiya, and geopolitics in the title. And people will attract to it because you won't see that very often, right? I had to go back to Ibn Khaldun, one of the great Islamic scholars of all time. He conceptualized asabiya. It's basically, it's what the French would call esprit de corps. In English would be team spirit. And in fact, community spirit. The Chinese would interpret it as a community spirit, for instance. And like an overall idea that, to quote the great metaphysician, the Big Lebowski, ties the room together. So instead of a carpet tying the room together, we have the concept of asabiya. And this is exactly what the Houthis are applying. And that's why, in the same article, I quoted an interview by the Yemeni prime minister when he was absolutely emphatic. He said, look, what we're doing is because of humanitarian, religious, and moral imperatives for us. The most extraordinary thing is that no other, apart from Hezbollah, of course, nobody else across the Arab world, not to mention governments, of course, and the rest of the world, nobody is doing as much in practical terms to defend the idea that our people, as they put it, our people, between commas, they see the people in Gaza as our people, are being genocided, even with the ruling of the ICJ, who gave, in fact, another extra months for Israel to continue the genocide. And this was the reading of the people that I call the global cynic armada. They have a very, very good point. All of us analysts were trying to find the positives on the ICJ ruling. There are some positives, but in fact, they did the best that they could under the circumstances and under enormous pressure by the usual suspects. We all know that as well. But the differential offered by the Houthis and Ansarullah is that with one single stroke, and this is something that we already talked about before, and another analyst, of course, touched on this. It takes one single stroke to turn practically, half of the global commerce, trade, and interacting system upside down, and send them into total panic, and they don't know what to do. And we're not even talking about blocking the Strait of Hormuz, which would be much more important than blocking the Bab al-Mandeb and the Red Sea. So this is where we are at the moment. And what the other side, let's put it this way, has to offer, they could try to, okay, let's sit down on the same table, let's talk. This is called diplomacy, which is something that it doesn't exist in the Beltway, and obviously also doesn't exist in Brussels, as we are seeing nowadays, where, just as an aside illustration, which also illustrates what we're talking about, at the right moment where the European Union approves an extra 50 billion euro package over 4 years for Ukraine, you have the agricultural world from half of Europe, including Belgium, and this past week, especially in France, basically yelling. They said, look, we're not going to take it anymore. And obviously nobody is listening in Brussels. And in Paris, with the new Prime Minister, Guy Gabi, only 34, is Macron's mini-me, as we call him in Paris. And he appointed as foreign minister his former lover. So as you can see, everything is extremely meritocratic, isn't it? This is in one of the capitals of the world. So the dysfunction in the whole system, from what's going on in the US, which you know much better than I do, to what's happening in Western Europe and in Brussels, to what's happening in West Asia, it's evolving towards a perfect storm, which none of us know where this could lead yet. To quote the Americans, the malign possibilities are endless. And obviously they will be initiated by Washington. There's no question about that. They could be thinking that, okay, if we launch a measured, targeted strike against the axis of resistance for a few weeks, we're going to solve this problem, which is completely absurd. They are falling into the trap of the Zionists in Tel Aviv and the Neocons in Washington, the bomb, 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 bomb Iran Beach Boys John McCain syndrome. We're back to where we were in 2005, 2006. I'm sure all of you remember during the Cheney administration and with that lunatic Rumsfeld at the Pentagon. So in this sense, we are back. They are pushing for the Holy Grail from the beginning. You remember 7 countries in 5 years. We're back to 7 countries in 5 years, all over again. And it's really war of terror 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, right? And with an ongoing genocide to boot. So how can we keep, all of us analysts, how can we keep saying, looking around? You know, in my own particular case, I keep saying by coming here, Moscow, where I am. I left a country on the brink of civil war early this week in Paris, and I am back at the capital of the multipolar world where they are deciding what? A possible future. I spent this whole week here in Moscow having meetings. I just came back from an ultra important meeting to talk to all of you. Today, I made a point to, I arrived 5 minutes before the beginning of our conversation because I wanted to relate to you the importance of the sanity people, what they are doing compared to the total insanity that all of us are immersed in. You know, so this take this as a sort of introduction to our conversation.
Yes, well, it does feel like a redux of the war of terror, as you said. You have Lindsey Graham saying hit Iran hard. Of course, you have the Boltons of the world talking about war with Iran, and at the same time, you know, there are developments that kind of went more quietly as this strike on the CENTCOM base in Syria made the headlines. Iraq and Syria, of course, Syria has since the beginning been wanting U.S. troops and occupation forces out of its country. But Iraq has been talking about Prime Minister Soudani has said that he would like U.S. forces to leave. What are the chances that this could happen? Because it sounds like what's going to happen in the coming weeks is that the United States is actually going to be striking Iraq. As you said, it's going to be bombing Syria because these so-called Iranian forces, they are being singled out within these countries, which both want the United States out. So what are the chances that the United States gets out under the conditions of a Biden administration, which is tangled up in multiple fronts, not only in West Asia, but around the world? It seems to be escalating toward a nightmare scenario for the United States and the hegemon.
Well, Danny, to unquote Bob Dylan, they are not tangled up in blue. They are tangled up in dark, dark gray, at least, or total darkness, in fact. Darkness darkness dawns at the break of noon. That's another Dylan. Well, the perspectives are not very, very good, to be extremely realistic. I haven't had time to discuss this with the Russians yet. It's too early, probably next week. And their position on West Asia as a whole is very, very complex. It's very sophisticated. In Israel, Gaza, they more or less hedge still, because the influence of Israel here in many different levels is enormous. At the same time, they are building more and more solid bridges with the whole of the lands of Islam, especially the Arabs, and especially the Arabs who are now part of BRICS 10. This was part of the serious conversations of BRICS Sherpas and Sue Sherpas beginning of the week here in Moscow. And it was with Sergei Ryabkov, the deputy foreign minister, which is an extremely able diplomat. And also Lavrov was involved as well. Then Lavrov talked about it. They didn't get into details. This is something that we're going to learn in the next few days. But decisions at the highest level with BRICS, Iran, and Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the Emirates, this is a key, absolutely key reorganization of everything that is happening and could happening across West Asia, because these are all very, very important players in the region. Saudi Arabia is a particularly complicated case, because now that they are part of BRICS, they see it in terms of, okay, now we are with Russia, and now we have OPEC plus, even stronger. And we have BRICS supporting what we do at OPEC plus, but it's not that automatic all the time. The Emirates, they have a very ambiguous position vis-a-vis the genocide in Gaza, which basically they don't say anything. Probably they'll be too embarrassed if they actually said what they really think about it. They only think in terms of future deals with Israel as part of the IMEC, that famous connectivity corridor, which maybe will never happen, right? And of course, the key of the whole thing is Russia, China, and Iran, which their decisions, the trilateral decisions in their interconnected strategic partnerships, now they're going to extrapolate, and they're also going to include BRICS. So this means that a discussion that one of the discussions that I was having in my lunch today, only a few hours ago, the possibility that it's an almost certain possibility. Obviously, we cannot prove it with a smoking gun, because nobody on the record will confirm it, that what Yemen is doing has the full backup of Russia, China, and Iran. And this is already a mega, mega, mega game changer. All right. Relationship between China and Israel. Okay, they have a relationship in trade, intelligence, security, etc. But now the Chinese diplomacy now is saying out loud for the whole planet to listen, the necessity of start discussions on a sovereign Palestinian state. And that's extremely affirmative. And from the point of view of Chinese diplomacy, when things like that come, you have to pay attention, because they are never so affirmative, you know. And the Lebanese factor, very, very important. Because Israel is they're getting their asses kicked in Gaza in many different levels. The only thing that the IDF knows, and all of you know, and everybody knows, and the whole global south knows, is to kill women and children. As a fighting force, they are pathetic. And every good military analyst is going to tell you the same thing. If you ask Scott about that, if you ask Martianov about that, they're going to tell you the same thing. Everybody knows that. So killing women and children is very, very easy. Try fighting hardcore Hezbollah operatives in southern Lebanon, where they live, in their villages, where their weapons are, and they are defending their land. They're going to get their ass triple kicked. But still, they want to change the narrative. And that's what we're getting this past few weeks, etc. Okay, we're gonna go there. You're gonna have to retreat 50 kilometers up north, up to the Litani River, and that's it. And this is gonna be our land, theirs, right? It's not gonna happen. Everybody knows that, and everybody knows that when Nasrallah is a very, very measured character, and that's why he's respected by the Arab street, Sunni or Shiites all over the Arab world. He only says the essentials. He never threatens to do anything, and when they act with extreme, really resolutely, you know. And this is what's going to happen if they are attacked, and if they are attacked by the IDF in southern Lebanon. Once again, changing the narrative. So everybody's trying to change the narrative. The Israelis are trying to change the narrative from their failure in Gaza to Lebanon. The neocons are trying to change the narrative from the whole failure, in fact, their whole failure in the whole region, to bomb Iran back to 2005, 2006. And obviously, Russia, China, and Iran, looking at all that, they said, okay, why don't we extend the trap a little bit more? Sooner or later, this thing is going to snap. We don't know how it's going to snap and which way it's going to snap. And this accounts for the militias being bolder in their attacks against US bases. And I would say the great interrogation point of the famous drone that caused so much disaster at Tower 22 base, which is a mini base in the middle of nowhere in the Jordanian-Syrian border, and 30 kilometers more or less away from Al-Tanf, which is the mega American base inside occupied Syrian territory. It's something that obviously we won't get a confirmation from the Ministry of Defense here or from the Ministry of Defense in Tehran. But what's circulating in the corridors is something absolutely fascinating, that essentially the Iraqis or the Iranians passed to the Iraqis cracked the code of the American air defenses in Iraq and in Syria, the CRAM thing. So if this is true, wow, then we're talking about a tremendous practical game changer, because this will open the road for all these militias to start attacking all those American bases en masse, and not only the bases in Iraq and Syria. This could extrapolate to Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, everywhere. So this is one of the interrogation points in the air now. As soon as we have some sort of even indirect confirmation that that's the case, then it's game on. I would say that the game is already on, because the success, let's put it this way, of this attack on Tower 22 proves that, yes, they can do it. Mm-hmm. And they found a way to do it. Remember that before that, they tried, 100, 120, 150 times to attack those American bases unsuccessfully. And this one worked.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.